And now, today's featured speaker is Terrance Bacchus, class of 1990. Terrance is an accomplished businessman, having spent more than 30 years in corporate sales, managing multi-million-dollar sales budgets. In addition, he is a proud family man who enjoys spending time with his wife, also a Bentley alumna, and his 2 daughters. Recently, he added author to his list of accomplishments, having just published his book, Financially Empowered, Achieving Success Through Sacrifice. Terrance will share his journey and strategies with us today on how he went from growing up in the inner city of Boston to preparing for an early retirement and achieving financial success. His mission is to inspire our youth to accept his 25 to Millionaire Challenge and become financially empowered. Without further ado, please join me in virtually welcoming Terrance Bacchus. Thank you, Terrance.
Thank you, Emily. I just want to thank you and Bethany for organizing this and asking me to speak today. I also want to thank everybody who's on the call today. It's overwhelming to know that there's so many people that signed up to listen to me today. So I'm very humbled and thankful for you guys all being here. And then also just want to say I'm a proud Bentley alumni, as it was mentioned by Emily today. So you will hear a little bit about that when I'm talking. And then just top line, I just want to mention I am not a financial planner. I am not a financial advisor. Everything you hear today will be just my story and my journey. So know that I may not be able to answer the questions exactly the way you want them, because I don't want to give you some information that really is not professional. So if I don't answer your question, that's probably the reason why, but I will do my best to answer as much as I can. All right. So if I do my job today, there's going to be 5 key takeaways I would love for you to walk away from this presentation with. The first one is myths can turn into barriers, but only if you let them. So think about the word barriers, because you're going to hear that a little bit later. The second is it's a micro, day-to-day, week-to-week, and year-to-year sacrifices that's going to make the difference in your financial journey. So again, the key word here is sacrifices. The third bullet point here, it's okay to take financial advice from people who have your best interest at heart. Keep that in mind, because we all need somebody that we can kind of look to for advice. And a lot of people want to help you. So it'll be okay if you find those right people that can help you along your journey. The fourth point here is when you display financial discipline, you give yourself the greatest opportunity to build your wealth. And lastly, and this is one of my favorites, don't ever, ever, ever turn away free money. If someone's going to give you money, you should take advantage of it and run with it. And we're going to talk a little bit about what that looks like. So as you heard earlier, this is a little diagram of my journey. And I'll walk you through some of this before I get into the overall presentation. But you can see up in the left-hand box here, that is me. This is me in 2020. And if you do the math, you realize I'm somewhere in that 53 range. Actually, it'll be 53 in another few months. So I'm probably older than some of you on the call. So it just gives you a perspective about me. When you look at that box to the right of that where it says, welcome to Boston, I am a Bostonian through and through. Everybody knows it around me. Even living here in Ohio, they know my pride for Boston. You see right below there where it says Dorchester and Reading. Now, if you're from Massachusetts, you're probably familiar with both of those names. And the reason why you see both of those there is because I like to tell people I kind of lived 2 worlds growing up. And the reason why I say that is I'm a product of the METCO program, which is a busing program from the inner city where we bus inner city students to suburban towns for school. And I was part of that program for 12 years, so from grade 1 through 12. So as you can imagine, my experience is probably a little bit different than a lot of you on this call, but I'll give you a little perspective of what that looked like, just a little glimpse of it. So picture this inner city kid growing up in Dorchester, where you look outside of his window, which is an apartment and not a house, where you see a lot of things going on that you probably don't want to be associated with. So I'm thinking of things like people robbing people, people selling drugs, the things that you say, I want better for my kids. Now you flip it to the right with me being in Reading, and I'm going to school every day and I'm seeing people who don't look like me, but have things that I want to obtain. So think of people who get to go on vacations, people who have nice cars, people who live in a house. Because as I mentioned, until my wife and I got married, I had never ever lived in a house before. So that was something I looked at for 12 years and said, I want those things. And those were things that really drove me to where I am today. Also through that program, I was exposed to people who were willing to help me. So I think of my guidance counselor when I was in Reading, who did a nice job of helping me understand that accounting was something I thought I wanted to go into. And we knew Bentley was the place that had the best accounting opportunity in the Northeast. And she really did a nice job of helping me craft my paperwork to submit to Bentley. And as you can see, and as you heard, I am a Bentley class of 1990 alumni. Very proud of it, loved my experience at Bentley. I ran track for 2 years at Bentley, and then I kind of shifted over and did more of the intramural type sports, and also was involved with BUB, which is, Black United Body. But what I'm most proud about is I met my wife at Bentley also. She lived right down the hall from me freshman year, and we ended up getting married 2 years after college, and she's listed right there in the middle. Her name is Dolores. And the two young ladies on the side of her are my two daughters. Jasmine is on the left. She is a senior at Brown University. And Janae is on the right, and she is going to be getting dropped off for her freshman year at Carnegie Mellon in 2 weeks. So we are very proud of our children, although I could not make any of them become Bentley students, and I tried hard. Trust me, I did. That top right box is where you see the big G logo, and you're probably very familiar with it. That is the General Mills logo. 2 weeks after graduating from Bentley and having a marketing degree, I started my sales career at General Mills, where I spent 29 years with them up until last July, when I decided to leave the company and I moved over to another company. I now work for the Nielsen Company. But those are all the different things that got me to where I am today, which is to talk about my mission and my journey. I have a mission right now of when I retire, and I'm kind of starting the process now, is to get out and try to help inspire and empower our youth to become investors, because I know this kid who came from the inner city of Boston, that's what got me to where I am today, by doing those things on the front end and investing early and investing for the long term. And I want to help make sure that we have more and more of our youth taking that mindset and realizing that they can actually achieve financial success if they do some of the things I'm going to talk about. So you're going to hear me use the word empowered, and you've already heard it a couple of times. So I thought it'd be great just to kind of ground you on what Merriam-Webster's definition of what it means. It says having the knowledge, confidence, means, or ability to do things or make decisions for oneself. Now, while I have those 4 words highlighted, to me, the words I really like on this is make decisions for oneself. Empowered is all about having the tools to be able to make your own decisions. So imagine sitting here, and I'm going on 53 this year, and I'm having a conversation about coming from the inner city of Boston to possibly retiring at 55. That's what I say when I say having the ability to make decisions for myself. I do not want to have to work till I'm 65 or 70 unless it's a decision that I make and not one that I have to do because of financial reasons. So I think it's important that we just talk about some of the statistics that exist today, just to ground you on why I think we need to focus on our youth, and not just youth, but also from a race perspective. The first one is, when you look at the generation gap that currently exists, this chart here shows you when a company offers a 401k as an investment opportunity, the amount of people within the generations are actually starting to decline of who's actually investing. So when you look at the millennials on the far right, you can see we're down to just 52% of millennials who have an opportunity to invest in a company 401k actually do so. And that is down from the Gen X as well as the boomers. So I feel that's a great opportunity to kind of reach some of our younger people to say, we need to take advantage of the free money that's available to us. And I'm going to talk about what that free money looks like. The second one is a wealth gap. And this one is near and dear to my heart because I am a person of color. And, I fall within that 1.9% that you see on that chart, where you look at the number of families that have $1 million or more in wealth. You can see Black, it's down to 1.9% compared to Hispanic at 2.3 and white at 15.2. So you're talking 7 to 8 times gap between black and white. And there's many reasons that account for it. And it's not really to point fingers at anyone, but I will tell you that as a person of color, I take pride in looking at myself in the mirror and saying, am I doing all the things I need to do to not be in that 1.9%? And those are the things that I think all of us need to challenge ourselves to say, are we doing all we can do to be financially savvy? And then the third one is stock ownership. When you look at the percent of people who are actually in the stock market, you can see that that has been declining. It's actually down to 55%. And it actually used to be a lot higher pre-recession. So we need to get those numbers back up because, again, the more people we have that are in the market, we're going to find the more people who can actually build wealth and help solve that wealth gap and that generation gap that we talk about in the first two bars. Why is that important? Well, when you look here, you can see the top 10% of Americans who own or who are in the stock market, so ownership of stocks, have about $969,000. So keep that in mind because that's short of $1 million. So that's the top 10% of people in the market have just under $1 million. And I don't know about you, but I'd love to be in that top 10%. So over the next few slides, I'm going to ask you questions, and you don't have to say them out loud, but I'm going to start them off with a question. And this first question here, I want you to just take a moment and think about this. I'm going to give you 10 seconds, but the question says, do you see this as an obstacle or a barrier? And what you're looking at is a picture of a fence. So think about that. Is this an obstacle or is this a barrier? This is not a trick question. It's one that I bring up because I think a lot of times people look at things that are in front of them as barriers. And it's easy to see this fence as a barrier. And a barrier is something that it's in front of you. It's keeping you from succeeding. It's keeping you from reaching your goals. You cannot get over it. You cannot get around it. You are stuck. Versus if you see things as obstacles, you have that same vision in front of you, but you find ways to be able to get over it or get around it. It's going to take a little bit extra work on your part, but it can be done. And for me, growing up, it would have been easy to see things as barriers, but I chose to look at them as obstacles. The first one was about the fact that growing up poor didn't mean I had to continue to be poor. I could be financially successful. And I truly believe that. And I think if a lot of people in my position take that perspective, they can look at that as an obstacle, not a barrier. The second one is having little savings doesn't mean you have to wait to become an investor. I hear it time and time again. Well, I don't have a lot of money, so I can't invest right now. I'm here to tell you that you do not have to have a lot of money to become an investor. You just have to take a percentage of what you do have and make the dedication to actually using it for investing. And then lastly here, a lack of expertise doesn't mean you can't enter the stock market. A lot of times I hear people say, I want to get in the stock market, but I don't really know much about it, so I choose not to do it. There are a lot of resources out there that can help you get educated on how to learn about the stock market. But the first thing is you have to not let these things become barriers. Look at them as obstacles. And actually, I turn them in and I say you have to reject them as myths because that's exactly what they are. They are myths that keep you from achieving your overall financial goals. So the next question I have here is, what are you willing to sacrifice in order to achieve success? For me, I am so blessed that I had a mom that really knew the importance of education, and she prioritized that in my brother and our lives. One of the things that she did is she was very clear that we would not get an education from the inner city school system. It was just not on par with what we saw in the suburbs. So that's why she signed us up for that METCO program that I spoke about early on, where we got bused from the inner city to the suburban schools. That education really is what set me up for where I am today. And I'm so grateful for that. Now with that, there were some things that came along with it from a sacrificial standpoint. The first one is, when I'm on a school bus at 5:30 in the morning and you make stops between Dorchester, Roxbury, and Mattapan, you were often on that school bus for at least an hour before you actually even got on the highway to go to Reading. So for me, that was probably a 2-hour bus ride one way. And it was probably a 20-mile ride when you think about the distance between Dorchester and Reading. Now it says 40 miles on here because obviously that's round trip. But in my case, I didn't have that same trip the way it's scheduled on that plan here. For me, I had to give up some family time because I was involved in sports when I was in school. And as a result, when I was finished with sports, the only way I can get home was to take a commuter rail from Reading into North Station. And from North Station, I took the subway, the Orange Line, into Dorchester. And from there, I had to take a bus. So many, many nights for many, many years, I was not getting home until 7:30, 8 o'clock in the evening. And, obviously I'm not sitting down having dinner with my mom and my two brothers. So from a sacrifice standpoint, I had to sacrifice family time. And then thirdly, I had to balance vastly two different environments. As I spoke early on about growing up in Dorchester and then going to school in Reading, as you can imagine, that comes with some challenges. Anytime you live in an environment, but you go somewhere else, there are people in your current environment that think you're either considered a sellout or you're just not with them. So you really have to do a job of understanding how to fit in with that inner city environment. But then on the flip side, when you go to Reading, you're now one of a few African-American kids in a population of 99.9% white, and you have to make sure you're fitting in and you're talking the right way, you're acting the right way, you perform the right way. So it could be challenging, but I can tell you, it also is what made me the person I am today, which is very strong and very independent. And it also is the person that makes me want to share my story with other people so that they feel like it can be achieved if you give up some of those sacrifices. The third piece here is, are you willing to set financial goals? Anything in life requires you to set goals, and obtaining financial success is no different. I am very blessed that I had a fellow alumni. Her name was Sherry Fijo. She's in the picture in the middle there. She went to Bentley and graduated a year before I did. And she started working at General Mills a year before I did. And when I got hired and started on the first day of the job, she told me, she says, I don't know a whole lot about a 401k, but I will tell you to max it out right away. So now you take this kid who had no money, and I'm thinking to myself, okay, I trust you. You look different than I am. You have more money than I do. You're probably more knowledgeable than I am. I trust you. And that was probably the best advice, financially speaking, that I've ever been given in my life. And even in the book that I just wrote, I made sure that I gave a thing to Sherry, because without that push, I probably would have never done that investment. So I'm very grateful to her for that. And what I did is I invested the max I could, which was 15% of my income the first day on the job. And you see in that it says before tax. And the reason why that's important, because you will quickly learn is that when you do your 401k investing, that money comes out before you get taxed. So what you're in essence doing is lowering your overall tax rate that you're being taxed when you do your taxes. So it's a double win for you from that perspective. I will say you have to set financial goals and investment goals. When my wife and I got married a couple of years after college, we knew right away we wanted to be homeowners. As I mentioned, I had never lived in a house my entire time. And that was a goal that I had because I've seen a lot of my friends in Reading have those homes that I wanted. So we set goals, and what we did is we would find ways to save money, but still enjoy life. So I always share the story of the entertainment book, because that's something that, if you're not familiar with it, it's a book that comes out every year. It has a bunch of restaurant coupons in it and hotel coupons. And, I always say there's no shame in my game. And we would buy those every year. And what it allowed us to do is to say, make a $30 investment, but then have the ability to go out and have dinners like everybody else was doing, even though we weren't spending the same rate, because those coupons would give you a buy one, get one dinner. And no one knew next to us that we were sitting there using coupons, but we fit in with everybody else, but we were saving money and saving for our home. So that's just one example of how you can set a goal and then stick to it. The third piece here is really around surrounding yourself with people who are financially successful. Anybody who knows me knows I love to be a sponge around people who have things that I want, because I want to learn how they achieve them. And most people want to help you, as Sherry did early on this slide. So the more people you can surround yourself that are financially savvy, the more they're going to want to help you. And that's just something I've always prided myself doing. And I even do it till this day. I have a friend right here in town, and he and I talk 2 or 3 days a week, and we just talk about different stock investments. And he asked me, hey, what did you hear about this? And I tell him what I know. And we just kind of keep each other honest, but we also help each other grow financially. And then fourth, I said, beat the credit card at their own game. Now, I remember when I was on Bentley's campus, we had credit card companies coming in trying to sign up all the college students. And, you know, I said to myself, I did not want to create that habit of having too many credit cards and going into debt, because debt is the thing that could be a downfall for so many of us. So I found a way to beat them at their own game. A lot of credit card companies will pay you a cash back bonus for using their credit card, but the hope is that you don't pay off your balance every month. So what my wife and I do is we will charge as much as we can every month, and we have never, ever carried a balance on our credit card. We pay it off every month. So you know what happens? At the end of the month, we have money that goes into an account from the credit card company that says, here's your cash back reward for the month. So in essence, they're paying us to carry their credit card. So as you think about what you're going to buy, I would just tell you to think about how you can beat them at their own game and keep yourself out of debt. So this is a quote from, I put the quote together, but it came from someone that I really look up to in the financial world. And I think you're going to know his name when I say it. But the question is, would you rather be broke or would you rather be wealthy? Seems like a pretty easy question. I know you're all thinking, I want to be wealthy. But again, are you willing to make the sacrifices to get there? The reason why I love this quote from Warren Buffett is because it says, wealthy people invest first and spend what's left, and broke people spend first and invest what's left. So I would ask you, if you're not investing right now, that is probably impacting whether or not you're going to be wealthy or broke. And, you know, Warren Buffett, yes, he's a billionaire, and I do not have anywhere near the financials that he has, but I learn a lot from him by how he carries himself, where he lives. For those who don't know Warren Buffett, he is one of the richest men in the world. And till this day, he still lives in the same house he grew up in Nebraska. And this guy could have houses anywhere he wants, but he's a very humble guy. He's a very wise guy. In fact, if you're in Massachusetts, which most of you probably are, or at least have been there, he owns the Jordan's Furniture Store now. His company, I believe, bought that a number of years ago. So I took that advice and I avoided negative spending habits. Now, I know this is going to probably get to the core of some of you when I bring up this example, but the example really is about anything that you have from a bad spending habit. And I too do have one. My vice is Diet Mountain Dew. But I will tell you, in this case, I'm going to use the coffee example. Growing up in Boston, Dunkin' Donuts is on every corner, as you know. And I don't drink coffee till this day. And it's not that I don't like the taste of coffee. I probably would. But I saw so many people going to Dunkin' Donuts every day, lining up on the street to get their coffee. You know, and I start doing the math in my head and I say, if I took that same $3 or $4 a cup at the time that it was, and I multiplied that times 5, and I multiplied that times 52 weeks, that same pot of money could be that same money that could be being put into a 401k or a mutual fund or even the stock market. So we try to avoid some of those spending habits. Next, I said, spend my free time attending financial seminars. When I graduated from Bentley, and I was very grateful for my education at Bentley, I learned about accounting, I learned about economics, but the one thing I did not have was the knowledge around investing. And that's the one thing I wish I had stayed a couple more years, because they put that stock from in, which I came back to campus and I was in awe thinking, man, why wasn't this here when I was here? Because I would have learned so much. But what I did is I signed myself up for seminars. And through those seminars, I learned about stocks, mutual funds, bonds, other things that I didn't learn at the time. And I just found that to be extremely helpful for me. So I would challenge you, young or old, there are lots of resources out there that can help you from that standpoint. Protect yourself in your investments. As you start accumulating wealth, you want to make sure you're getting insurance to protect you and your family. As you start having kids or thinking about kids, consider a 529 savings plan. We all know the price of college is very expensive. I have 2 kids in private schools right now, and it's like having a second mortgage. I just challenge you to think about ways to save for college, because you're going to want to let your kids go to the school that's going to make them the most successful. You don't want money to be the factor that keeps you out of that college. And then lastly, contribute to a health savings account. I mentioned that my goal is to retire early. I'm 53 this year. I want to get out in a couple of years and start following this mission that I'm sharing with you today. And health insurance is probably going to be the most expensive cost that you're going to have when you do retire. So if you can start putting money aside today, and a lot of companies do have what they call an HSA or a health savings account, where you can put a certain amount of money in per year, that's going to help you as it accumulates over years, so that when you do retire, you have some money already built up to pay for any unforeseen medical expenses that do come up. A few quotes that I live by, and these are specifically my quotes. One, as I said, if you're blessed with money, you need to be able to manage it. And what I mean by that, I love financial advisors and financial planners, and I think that if you don't want to manage your own money, that is perfectly fine. That's why they're there. They're very professional. But I also believe you should understand how to manage it yourself. That way, when they tell you what they're doing with it, you have an understanding of how your money is being managed. The second one is, if you can't pay cash for it, you probably shouldn't buy it. I say this not to brag, but I use it as an example. My wife and I, till this day, the only thing that we don't own is our house. Everything else that we buy, we will not buy it unless we can pay cash for it. And that's what keeps you out of debt. And then lastly, I said this earlier, if it's free, it's for me. And I'm going to give you an example of why you should look at taking some free money. So real quickly in this example, this is just going to show you, if you had a salary of $50,000, you contributed that 15% that I talked about on the front end into a company 401k, and the company is nice enough to match, say, 5% of that, or excuse me, 50% up to 6%. Let's take a look at how your money would grow over time. If you start up by age 25, which is what I'm encouraging all of the younger folks on this call to do, and again, if you're a little bit older, no big deal. It's never too late to start. You just might have a little bit longer to catch up and have to make a little bit more investment on your end. But you can see after 10 years, you would be up to about $139,000. After 15 years, you would be up to $264,000. 50 years, $707,000. And by age 55, you can be well over $1 million. So think about earlier on in this presentation when I talked about the fact that 10% of the people who are in the stock market have $1 million or close to $1 million. And you could have that same $1 million if you started by age 25 and invest it for the long run. And then finally, a lot of people feel like you have to work till you're 65. If you do, that's okay. But look how your money grows from 55 to 65. You're talking more than double. And then you're getting free money, which is in that middle section there, from the company that's doing a company match. In this case, you're getting roughly about $92,000. So I don't know about you, but I'm not going to turn away free money from anybody. And again, that's that top 10% that I had talked about. So I asked the question, are you ready to become financially empowered? If the answer is yes, I encourage, in fact, I challenge you to accept my 25 to Millionaire Challenge. And what that means is, for the young people who are listening to today, I want you to say, I want to become an investor, and I want to do this by age 25, and I'm going to stay at it at least until I'm 50, if not longer. That would be the 25 to Millionaire Challenge. Again, if you're a little bit older and you're starting at 35 or 45, there's nothing wrong with changing that 25 to 45 and just committing to staying in it for the long term. Before I leave you, I just want to share with you kind of my plan of my order of investing as a way to help you out and see kind of how I've done it. First, I started off with the company retirement plan, which I talked about, the 401k. I maxed out my 15%, gave a lot of potential for free money, which I just showed you. Secondly, I opened up an individual retirement plan, also known as an IRA or a Roth IRA. There's some really good tax benefits to doing that. Thirdly, real estate. We talked about becoming homeowners. My suggestion to you is if you're going to become a homeowner, try to get 20% down before you buy that house, because that's going to save you a lot of money, what they call PMI, where you have to pay for like an insurance on the front end because you're more of a risk and not having as much equity in your home. So think about that as you're saving for a house. Fourth, learn about your stocks and mutual funds. You can see here, we got into the stock and mutual fund investing. We opened up a brokerage account, and that's kind of what helped us. And there's really good accounts out there that you can look at doing. The key here is after tax. So if you're trying to figure out, will I have access to that money? The answer is yes. That is one of the most liquid forms of assets that are available to you other than cash. Fifth, we talked about a 529 plan for your kids. And then lastly on this, of these six would be the health savings account, which I talked about on that end. And then the last three here, you can see always have an emergency fund. You know, if you read online, they're going to tell you 3 months. I would challenge you and say, look at 6 months or even a year, because when you become that homeowner, you are going to have some things that do pop up on you. I know when my wife and I bought our house, the very first year our furnace went, and that cost us thousands of dollars that we weren't prepared for. So always have that emergency fund. Life insurance is something that you want to do to protect your family. And then finally, the will and estate planning. You want to make sure as you're accumulating assets that you're protecting not only you, but your family, so that if something did happen to you, that they would be all set. So if I did my job, hopefully you took these 5 key takeaways away. Again, just to recap, myths are what can turn into barriers, but only if you let them. I challenge you to see things as obstacles and not barriers. 2, it's the micro day-to-day, week-to-week, or year-to-year sacrifices that's going to make the difference. Are you willing to make those sacrifices to get the financial success that you're looking after? 3, it's okay to take financial advice from people that have your best interests at heart. I mentioned Sherry, and I'm so grateful for her advice. 4th, when you display financial discipline, you give yourself the greatest opportunity to build wealth. And we talked about some of the disciplines. I used the coffee example. I used the coupon book example. But whatever it is, just stick with the plan. And then lastly, don't turn away free money, because I think it's the greatest opportunity to get free money is to a company 401k. So if you're blessed to have that situation, please take advantage of it. If you want to learn more about my journey, this is the book that you heard about early on. It's called Financially Empowered, Achieving Success Through Sacrifice. You'll learn a whole lot about me. You'll learn more about my journey. And because this is my Bentley community who I love so dearly, anyone who wants to purchase the book, there are 2 ways. One is through Amazon, but if you want an autographed copy sent to you, you can actually pay through Venmo, and I will mail that out directly to you. So I just want to say thank you to those of you who are on the call today. And then also to thank you to Bentley University, as well as Emily and Bethany for having me on this call today. And now I will turn it back over to them and answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Terrance. I learned a lot. I need to reconsider my Dunkin' Donuts habit. You're right. Once you get it started, it's hard to stop. So these are good advice for younger generations, perhaps, or I will reconsider my own habits. But let's get started. We have some questions that were pre-submitted. So we'll start with one of our first questions. And this question is there anything about the current situation, I would imagine the global pandemic and the economic situation that we're in right now, that would change your advice for a young person's plan?
I wouldn't say change their advice. I would say, personally speaking, I think from an investment standpoint, it's a great opportunity, especially to enter the market. So if you think back to March, I can tell you most people's stock portfolios had taken a major dip. I'll use my example only. Mine had gone down to like -9%. And within 30 days, I was up to 35% growth. So anytime you see something like that happens, if you're in a position where you can invest, that's a downturn. And I say that's the best time to get into market, because they always say, buy low, sell high. That's a great example.
Thank you. That's good advice. We had a question come in earlier today while you were talking. I just want to find it. Okay, let's see. What would you recommend for students with only $1,000 to invest in? And I know you don't want to give specific advice, but maybe you can share roughly.
Well, first question I would ask is like, what is that money sitting there for? Like, is there a goal for that $1,000? I always say money should have a specific value, meaning you shouldn't have it in your savings account. You should have a plan for it. So if you have $1,000 and you're telling me I'm saving because I want to get a house, or I have $1,000 because I just want to invest, then I would say investing is the way to go. But you have to start and back up and say, what is my risk factor? Everybody has a different risk tolerance. The stock market is not for everybody because you are going to have peaks and valleys, and there's going to be times where your return is not as great as you want, and not everybody can stomach that. So I would say if you're not a risk taker, stay out of the stock market and start with something like a mutual fund or even a CD. I'm not a huge fan of CDs, but what I do like about CDs is it kind of gives you a guaranteed rate of return, but you have your money locked up for a certain amount of time. I like the stock market because it's a little bit more, I can get that money out if I need it. It's more liquid. So I would say take that $1,000, think about what your overall goal is for the $1,000, and then that'll help determine which way you want to go as far as an investment goes.
And can you clarify what a CD is for our participants?
Yes, certificate of deposit. So basically you can go to a bank or a financial institution and say, I would like to put my money in a CD, and there's usually a limit of how minimum it has to be in it. So it could be 6 months, a year, 2 years. The longer you put it in for, the greater the interest rate that they give you. Now, I will tell you the interest rates are they're really low. So you're talking 2 and 3%. So you think about the fact you're tying your money up for 2 years to get a 3% return. I would tell you, you go in the stock market, you can get a 3% return in a week, if it's a good week. So again, it's all about comfort level, but CDs have their place.
Thank you. And going back to kind of a nice segue about the goal. So if someone is targeting a 20% down payment for their home, do you recommend keeping that liquid or investing to get to that 20%?
That's a great question. So I would say, first and foremost, you want to try to do both, but I know that's not real for everybody. If you're asking me which one do I go first, I will always tell you to invest first. Invest in your retirement. And the reason why I say that is I talked about the free money that the company is giving you if you have a 401k, and your money is going to grow a lot faster in a retirement plan than it is in real estate. Real estate is an outstanding investment, but you're going to see your return growing a lot faster in a 401k. So start with the 401k, then think about the real estate investment. If you can do both at the same time, I would.
Great. And getting back to the stock market, how do you recommend getting started? You mentioned Sherry, who's on today. Thank you, Sherry, for joining us for her advice. But how do you get started with the stock market? Someone asking about working with Fidelity Money Markets account or downloading an app. Are there books, other resources?
There's a million resources. So I can share a few that I go on Yahoo Finance every day. I love it. And I just kind of read like, what companies are they talking about? I look at Mad Money with Jim Cramer. He's a little bit crazy, but he's actually super knowledgeable. You can call in and ask questions. I'd use CNBC as a great resource. People who I talked about surrounding yourself with, who have knowledge and insights, find someone who's financially savvy and pick their brains. I think the more people you can surround yourself with, I think is great. But those are some of the resources that I look to utilize when I'm investing. And I mean, you have the internet. When we were in college, we had no internet. So you could type in almost any question about investing and find it in a matter of seconds.
The internet is very helpful these days, that's for sure. Terrance, should a young investor start contributing to a health savings account now? It seems to be an instrument for later in life.
No. I say invest early and long. Yes, and again, I think as a young person, we don't think we need life insurance. We don't think we have to worry about the 529 because we don't have kids yet. I'm telling you now, the earlier you do it, if you can do it, the better it's going to help you in the long run, because as you get older, there's other things that you're going to want to do. And if you've already started building up those different funds, it's going to help you. So from a medical standpoint, I tell everybody, you may not have to max it out every year. You can contribute a little bit more each year, but start it now, because we don't know. You could have a medical problem at age 30 or 35. And it'd be nice to have some money set aside that would help pay for those medical expenses.
Exactly, if it's right there on the table. Okay. Do you recommend a young investor utilizing a standard 401k to get as much money into the account as soon as possible for growth, or a Roth 401k to not have to pay taxes in retirement?
Those are good questions. It depends. So I know the 401k really well because, again, the company is usually matching. And I know, like with General Mills, when we had good years, instead of the 50%, 50 cent on the dollar, they matched dollar for dollar. It all depends on what the company is doing. So if your company is willing to do that, and you can get a Roth 401k through them, it's not a bad way to look. But I always start with the 401k first and then go over to the Roth as a second one. But yes, because I'm not a financial planner and advisor, I would say definitely consult the professionals on that because they would be better equipped to give you the which way is better for me in my situation.
And speaking of debt, any recommendations for financial planning or investing when you're dealing with student loans? That's probably a popular question.
Yeah, so I mean, the good thing about student loans is usually the interest rates are relatively low. So I think again, if you get out of college and you have a nice job, I encourage everybody to pay back their student loans. But you also have to look and say, can I make more money in the market from a return standpoint than that actual loan interest rate that I have? If the interest is yes, I'm making sure that I invest in the market and then I can use some money to help pay off those loans. If you have a high interest loan, pay off the high interest loan first. So it all depends on how good the rate is.
Okay, let's see. I don't know if this is standard, but do health savings accounts carry over if you switch jobs or companies?
Yes, they do. That's the great thing. So as I mentioned, I was at General Mills for 29 years, and I actually had a health savings account with them, and I have one now with my current employer. And while it doesn't necessarily switch over, you don't lose it. So I actually have one with General Mills, and I have one with my new employer, and it's great. And there is a max that you can put in per year. I believe it's $3,500, I think it is, per year. And that's regardless if you have one or two companies, it's a max of the 3,500. But no, you don't ever lose that money. And what's great about it, it's tax-free, as long as it's used for medical.
All right, got a couple more questions here. Is it right that you can use your Roth IRA contributions to buy a house?
Yes, so the thing about a Roth, which is what I do like about it, is unlike a regular traditional, you can take money out of your Roth up to your principal amount that you put in, and the penalties are nowhere near what it is on a regular traditional IRA. So yes, you can take money out of your Roth. You can't take the interest that it's built up, but you can take up to your principal. So again, if you need liquid assets, that's not a bad way to go. Now, with that said, I don't encourage anyone to tap into your retirement plans to buy a house or to pay for college, quite honestly. If your goal is to save for college and you've started with the 401k and then you've done your IRA, I would have a separate college fund or whatever it is that you're saving for than those two retirement funds.
All right, and do you have a general percentage of what you spend, what percentage of your income should go towards rent or even, some of the other basic needs?
Yeah, I'm kind of hesitating here because the quick answer is no. So, and this comes again, going back to my growing up, not having any money. I'm cheap to begin with. So, and you wouldn't know it because I like to invest. But I would say for me, it's one of those, I know how much money I have coming in, and I actually will tell you I have less than 50% of my pay come in because I'm making sure I'm investing in different places. That's a lot for a lot of people. But if I started early on when I didn't miss the money. So I just lived on what I had. So it was easy for me to just say, I'm going to put all this money into my 401k and into my stocks. So I say all that to say, I don't have a percent that I can give you, but I will say if you do it early, you're not going to miss it. That's the best advice I can tell you. Think about it from that standpoint.
For all those folks who are on that are younger, definitely get started now, right?
Yes.
Okay, well, that's the end of our questions. Do you have any final thoughts or advice for our audience?
I'm going to say hi to Sherry because I didn't know she was on. So thanks for joining, Sherry. No, again, my whole goal and my mission really is to reach our young folks. That's why the book was written, and that's why the 25 to Millionaire Challenge is out there. I would encourage all of you to take the challenge regardless of your age. I hope that you will look at buying the book if you want to learn more about my journey. And I'm not using the book to make money off of. I'm using that book because I want to give back to the community, and I want to get my story out there to inspire young people. So this is not a get rich type thing that I'm doing. This is part of my overall mission of what I have passion for. So anytime I could help any of the young folks get to where they want to be financially, I'm all for it. So I just want to say thank you again to you and to Emily, for you and Bethany for helping. And I look forward to doing this again.
Thank you, Terrance. If people want to find you, can they email you? Are you on social media?
Yeah.
Can they reach out to you on social media?
Yeah, I'm on Facebook. I'm on LinkedIn, Terrance Bacchus. And then if you want to email me to possibly purchase a book, it's tmbacchus@yahoo.com. I do have a website up, but it's not really functional. It's called Bacchus Empowered Coaching. That's something I want to do in my next phase, so I'm working on that. So now I'm actually looking for a young person, a young mind, who might want to help me manage my website. So if there's
Here we
someone,
go.
hit me up.
All right. Thank you so much again. Go out and buy Terrance's book. Reach out to him. Support other Falcons. Thank you again, Terrance, for participating today. We so appreciate it.
My pleasure. Go Falcons.
Have a good day, everyone.